Legends of Runeterra, the game they said would take down the Titans, become the #1 card game in the world, and solve world peace. Well, maybe not the last one, but the game has become more depressing than ever. With a shifted focus on PvE mode, a lacking support for competitive play, and odd design choices have led the game to its awaiting, looming grave. When I think of Runeterra, I think of three things: the champions, how easy it is to obtain new cards, or free to play, and the deck building. So when they decided to pivot into PvE, I knew lore would change forever. In the past, lore had made similar odd decisions. It seemed like the team didn't know which way to steer their ship and ended up losing sight of why players downloaded Runeterra in the first place. Since release, lore has always done a good job at connecting the gap between lore and playstyle. Each card feels unique, but with the most recent release of a second Lux, it has me wondering why. There's still a vast amount of champions unreleased, and with the addition of lore champs, I find it hard to see them all being added. That being said, there have been some releases which freshen up the game. Taking Rise for example, which is the perfect depiction of peak design and gameplay. The game focus shifts entirely, and when you're able to plot down each landmark and win, you feel as if you've outplayed your opponent. Being a game that prides itself on being one of the most free-to-play out there, monetization was always going to be a challenge for lore. And even with the massive trailers garnering hundreds of thousands of views, it was never enough to keep the game afloat. Battle passes, skins, guardians, card backs, boards, and emotes all weren't enough. So why would a good game not be able to successfully monetize itself? Well, there's many reasons, but a lot of the content felt unprepared, and it's clear there was not enough foresight into the future of this game. Runeterra is unique in that it can pull in large amounts of players who are invested in the universe, from games like League of Legends or TFT. However, Runeterra failed to capitalize and cultivate on this, leading to many players simply coming and going. Not to mention, a lot of CCGs find their profit through pack openings. However, lore went the other way, with the only real pack openings being the weekly vault. I haven't even logged in for over a year, yet I still have enough shards for all the cards I could want. It's fair to say, Runeterra is a prime example of how not to monetize a CCG. With the new focus on PvE mode, tournaments being shut down, and large YouTubers leaving the Runeterra sphere, community is at an all-time low. If they decided to incorporate the community for future releases and structured their events right, the game might have built a solid community over time. Large events like Worlds seemed to be well done, but when it came to supporting small creator events, that was nowhere to be seen. Once again, it feels like the devs dropped the ball on another key aspect for growth, but the nail in the coffin was Path of Champions. I've never really been a single player type of guy, with Inscription being one of the exceptions. That being said, I was already disappointed with the addition of a PvE mode, but I figured Path to Champions might be similar to Hearthstone's adventures. For those who don't know, Hearthstone has a small single player mode where you can use a unique hero, fight epic bosses, and craft a deck through choices. For Hearthstone, this was a great little side mode where you can challenge yourself against some really well designed enemies. So I gave Path to Champions a try with an open mind, and as expected, it needs a lot more work. I can somewhat see what they were going for, but it is way too overwhelming, especially for new players. There's champion experience, wild fragments, relics, stardust, star crystals, legend points, and probably more that I missed. Like with most things in lore, there seems to be no clear-cut direction, and in this instance, too many things going on at once. The reason Hearthstone Adventures managed to succeed is that it was simplistic without 40 different options stacked atop each other. Bosses and enemies that you went against felt unique and captured a player's interest, but here you're versing a champion you've already seen 100 times. There's no allure, you know what their champion does and already expect an outcome. Alright, now some quick comments because I probably missed a lot. Starting with deck building, it always felt smooth, and I think with the addition of Runeterra champions, having additional effects to deck building is exciting and allows new players to explore. Coming back, however, I've noticed landmarks have become substantially stronger with like different stages and more activations, which adds another level of complexity but can quickly outshine other landmarks and force players to always have a counter. This is kind of a specific thing, but the boost effect makes no sense and should definitely be rewarded. I highly dislike the ambush cards, and I think a mechanic like that can be extremely dangerous in a card game. Faction designs still feel great and vastly different from one another, and I think this is mostly out of the question, but I think adding Ixtal or even a Void faction, which as said is probably out of the question, could bring some light back to Runeterra. Metas feel just fine to me, but it's strange that there's still metas from years ago that are still played today. Reward paths of course are great and should always stay in the game and are great for new players. Overall, lore feels like an empty husk of what it once was, and although Riot may have dropped the ball, I truly think lore, even with all its flaws, is one of the best strategy card games out there. And looking at some of the views the trailers get, the game is by no means dead. It's clear there are a lot of people silently watching from the background, rooting that Runeterra will turn itself around, and I hope it can. But as for now, I can't see a future for Runeterra unless some big changes are made soon.